The first AWS service that I wanted to start from today is S3. Firstly, we'll learn the basics of S3 till the Solutions Architect Associate level. I have completed the necessary research and some of the concepts that are not Solutions Architect Associate level will also be discussed because S3 means Simple Storage Service. There are 3 S's over here and that's why it is named S3. So what is S3? This is a simple, popular and inexpensive storage service from AWS. To store your data in S3, you work with resources called buckets and objects. A bucket is a container for objects, an object is your data. So to store an object in S3, you create a bucket and then upload the object to a bucket. When the object is in the bucket, you can open it, download it and move it. One can store any file types such as documents, PPTs, PDFs, text files, videos and much more in S3. Not only these, other AWS services will also use S3. Like EC2 stores snapshots and backups in S3, CloudWatch exports logs and metrics to S3, and Lambda outputs data logs to S3. Not only these 3, services like RDS, CloudTrail, Glue, Kinesis, EMR, Redshift, Athena, Data Pipeline, all these services use S3 for their data storage. S3 provides unlimited data storage. You can store as much data as you want in S3. Objects stored in one availability zone is by default replicated across multiple availability zones to ensure high availability. But you can't see those replications. They are internal to AWS. You can even explicitly set to replicate across different regions. Then other replications will be in your account. Next is S3 restrictions. By default, you can create 100 buckets per account. There is no limit to the bucket size and there is no limit to the number of objects inside the bucket. The file size can be 0 to 5 terabytes, which means object size can be 0 to 5 terabytes. Files larger than 100 megabytes should use multi-part upload, which means objects that are greater than 100 MB, then we need to upload them by dividing the object into smaller parts. We'll explore this more in detail in this video itself using CLI, which will be more fun. Next is bucket naming rules. There are some rules to name the bucket as it will be used in the domain name, right? No uppercases, no underscores, no special characters except dot and hyphen. Bucket name must be 3 to 63 characters long. Bucket names can begin and end with a number or a character. While naming the bucket, adjacent dots or hyphens are not allowed. Though dot and hyphens are allowed, putting them adjacent are not allowed. I forgot to mention one more point here. Bucket names must be unique across all the AWS accounts in all the AWS regions. Now let's look at some examples of naming buckets which will make the above points somewhat clear. The bucket name was cloud-newbie.1023. As this name contains hyphen and dot which are allowed, it contains small characters and numbers. Overall, this bucket name is accepted. If the bucket name is abc.123, as it contains a repetition of dots, bucket name is not accepted. If the bucket name was capital ABC_123, as this contains capital letters and underscore which is not allowed. And so this bucket name is not allowed. If the bucket name is cloud-newbie, as it contains small letters and a hyphen which are allowed. And so this bucket name is allowed. Next is types of buckets. There are 2 types of buckets. One is general purpose buckets and second is directory buckets. General purpose buckets organizes data in a flat hierarchy, which means objects are stored at the same level without any folder-like structure. This is the original S3 bucket type. By default, this bucket type will be selected. This type is best for storing any type of data where no specific structure is required, like logs or backups. This is used with all the storage classes except S3 Express 1 zone. You can create 100 general purpose buckets per account. Now let's learn about the directory buckets. This organizes the data in a folder hierarchy. This type of buckets are useful when you want to group similar kind of objects. You can even create folders in general purpose buckets as well, only to be used within S3 Express 1 zone. This type of buckets are recommended for single-digit millisecond performance on put-get operations. Here also you can create 100 directory buckets per account, but it can be increased to maximum of 1000 buckets per account by requesting AWS to increase this limit. Okay, now let's know more about folders in S3. S3 general purpose buckets does not have a true folders found in their hierarchy. In AWS S3, there is no such thing called a real folder even in the directory buckets. All S3 buckets, whether it might be general purpose buckets or directory buckets, all are flat in structure and folders are just the visual representations and the objects are stored as a key value pairs in the buckets. Okay, when you create a folder, S3 creates a 0-byte S3 object with name that ends with slash. to make it look like a folder. As I already said, S3 does not have a real folders. Okay, now let's create a bucket and upload an image to the bucket, both using UI and CLI. Firstly, let's create it using UI. AWS changes its UI frequently. This is the recent UI and this UI might also change soon. For now, let's ignore everything. Just focus on creating a bucket. Later in this video, we will explore everything step by step. It will be more fun exploring all those. We already know that there are two types of buckets, and by default, general purpose buckets will be selected. In the old UI, we need to select the region of the bucket. In the latest version, the region was automatically selected. Although S3 is a global service like IAM, but we need to select the region because it improves retrieval speed. Now we know how to name a bucket. Let's test it by including capital letters, underscores and @. If I write capital C Cloud _Newbie @1023, if I scroll a little bit down, we'll look at object ownership, bucket policies, default encryption. In this video itself, for now just concentrate on creating a bucket and uploading an object. If I click create bucket, this should not accept. If I go up, bucket name must not contain uppercase characters, and also bucket name contains @ and underscore. Now let's replace capital with small letters and underscore with hyphen. If I click create bucket, this is a valid name and this should accept it. Now I'll upload an object in the bucket. I'll click upload button. I can add files, folders, whatnot, everything. Here, files greater than 160 GB must use AWS CLI or SDK or REST API. Now I'll add file and I'll select this rocky.png image. When I click upload, this image was successfully uploaded to the bucket. Now let's try to open this image. If I click this object URL link, I got some access denied error code in the XML format. I'll explain what this error message means in the later part of the video. For now, I'll just go back. To view the image, just click on that open button. Okay, we got the image. Okay, for fun,
just for fun, man.
Let's explore what this open button link has and that object URL doesn't have. I'll now copy this whole URL and paste in the VS Code. Okay, this URL has much more information than that object URL link. I'll now break down each part. The first line contains the endpoint of S3, which is AP South 1, and bucket name Cloud Newbie 1023 and object name RockyPNG. From second line, after this question mark, all these lines are query parameters in this URL. This XAMZ algorithm is responsible to verify whether the link is valid or not. This AWS uses HMAC SHA-256. This XAMZ content SHA-256 indicates the file contents are secure. And the next XAMZ credential, this part contains temporary credentials that are tied to your AWS user. Means the user who created this bucket. Next is date, the date and time on which this object was created. And next is expires. It contains after how many seconds this link will expire. Next is security token. This token is a part of temporary access given by AWS. Overall, anyone with this link can view the object in the bucket until the security credentials are expired. Now let's learn how to create a bucket using CLI. For this, you need to install AWS CLI. Installing it is so simple. You can find it in AWS documentation or using ChatGPT you can install. You can get the CLI version using AWS -v or -- version. It is 2.17 and CLI was built using Python. If I want to get all the buckets in my account, then I'll write AWS S3 ls. We already know that there is only Cloud Newbie 1023 bucket in my account and that got printed. Okay, if I want to get all the objects in this bucket, then I'll write AWS S3 ls S3:/ and then bucket name. This S3:/ is URI. This S3 command expects this URI. If you just write bucket name without the URI while using S3, it won't work. We already know that there is only one image in this bucket and that got printed. Okay, these are the basic commands so anyone can remember. If you want CLI to suggest the remaining commands while typing a command, you need to set one environment variable. That is AWS CLI auto prompt. You have to set to on partial. From now, when you partially complete any AWS command, CLI will suggest remaining. If I type AWS S3 and hit enter, look like VS Code, CLI was suggesting the remaining text. So there are 4 commands that start with S3, S3 API, S3 control, S3 outposts. When I select S3, I can select ls, website, cp, mv, rm, sync, mb, rb. For now, I'll select ls, which is used to list the buckets. Okay, now let's create a bucket using S3 command. Now I'll write AWS S3 mb for make bucket. S3://. As I said, this is URI, S3 expects it. Now I'll write the bucket name, Korla Gautam 1023. If I hit enter, bucket got created. Now let's upload an object into a bucket. If I write ls, now I want to upload this rocky2.png to this bucket. Let's make use of that auto prompt. If I write AWS S3 and hit enter, it was recommending commands. I'll select cp to copy. Now I'll copy this rocky2.png to this bucket. I'll write s3:/ and the bucket name. And the object was successfully uploaded to this bucket. Now I wanted to verify it with AWS S3 ls s3:/ and the bucket name. And it shows the object was successfully uploaded to this bucket. Now let's see what is there in the image that we have uploaded. For that, I'll open the console, click on the bucket that we have just created. If I click the same open button, okay, we can see the image now. As I said previously, you can even upload folders to S3 general purpose buckets. Okay, if I want to upload this movies folder to the bucket that we have just created now. Now if I try to upload the folders in the way that we have uploaded the files to the buckets. Okay, I got upload fail error. You have to use -- recursive at the end. As this is a folder, it has to put multiple files inside the folder to the bucket. Now folder was uploaded to the bucket. Now let's verify using AWS S3 ls and bucket name. Okay, files in the movies folder was uploaded directly to the bucket. If I open the console, let's verify how the objects are uploaded to the bucket. Okay, files in the folder are directly uploaded to the bucket. Okay, I think we have to specify to which folder in the bucket we have to upload these files. I'll again repeat the same command, AWS S3 cp movies s3:/ bucket name /movies. Now I'm expecting the files in the movies folder to be uploaded to the movies folder in the bucket. If I hit enter, there is again upload fail error. Okay, I forgot to put -- recursive at the end. Now if I hit enter, okay, the files in the movies folder are now uploaded to the movies folder in the bucket successfully. Now let's verify this by checking it on the console. Look, there is a movies folder was created. If I open the folder, there are 2 files in this folder. Now for fun, let's list the objects in this bucket and see how this folder contents are displayed. I'll write AWS S3 ls and the bucket name. It just displayed the folder name and some files in the bucket. If I want to get the contents of that folder, I think I need to add the folder name at the end. Yes, I got the contents of the folder. Okay, if I want to download the object in the bucket to the local, I can again use cp command to do this. I'll write AWS S3 cp and the bucket name of the object that I want to download and where I want to download in the current directory, and that's why I'm going to put dot. Okay, I got some error, unknown options dot. Okay, I forgot / at the end while naming the bucket. I want to download movies1.txt from this bucket to current directory, and it was successfully downloaded. If I write ls and there is movies1.txt downloaded. Okay, now let's delete the bucket without deleting the objects inside the bucket. I'll write AWS S3 rb for remove bucket and s3:/ and the bucket name -- recursive. Okay, there is something wrong with the command unknown options -- recursive. Let's remove that -- recursive and try removing the bucket. Look, we got bucket not empty error. That means without emptying the bucket, we cannot remove the bucket. Now let's delete all the objects in the bucket. For that, I'll write AWS S3 rm for remove s3:/ bucket name -- recursive, which is going to delete all the objects. If I hit enter, all the objects are deleted. If I try to remove the bucket now, AWS S3 rb bucket name, the bucket was successfully removed. There is one more command called S3 API, which is low level, through which we'll have more control over objects and buckets. It provides more options, while S3 is high level. We have seen it. It has provided very few options like CP, MV, RB, RM. S3 API has much more options than these. Now we'll explore this command. If I write AWS S3 API and hit enter, look how many options it was providing. Copy object, create bucket, create multi-part upload, delete bucket course. S3 API is much more flexible than S3. Now let's again try to create a bucket and upload an object using S3 API. Let's again make use of that auto prompt. Again, if I write AWS S3 API and hit enter, if I select this create bucket option, it was now asking me to provide bucket name. Now I want to use the same bucket name, corler-gautam.1023. Do you remember? In S3 command, we need to write s3:/ at the beginning of the bucket name. Here in S3 API, it is not required. Okay, now we got some new error. Illegal location constraint exception when calling the create bucket operation. I'm not sure what this error means. Let's check in the Google ones. I'm not going to use ChatGPT for this. I read somewhere when ChatGPT came into existence, Stack Overflow pages reduced traffic by 50%. 50% of the daily Stack Overflow users are now using ChatGPT. Let us give a hike in the traffic of the Stack Overflow pages.
జోకే బాగుందా గాడిద ఎగ్గులా ఉంది
Here one guy is facing the same error, illegal location constraint exception while creating a bucket. Here he was using S3 command to create the bucket. We didn't face that error, right, while creating a bucket using S3. Let's look what the solution the people gave for this question. To create bucket outside the EU East 1 region, regions outside the EU East 1 require appropriate location constraint to be specified in order to create a bucket in that desired region. This is the same command that we have written, right? I'll now copy this dash dash create bucket configuration. I'll paste this on the terminal. I'll copy that AWS S3 API create bucket and I'll paste here. I hit enter. Hey, magic! Error was gone and the bucket was created successfully. So when we create a bucket outside EU East 1 region, then this location constraint is required. Now I want to list the buckets whether it was created successfully or not. I'll now write AWS S3 API list buckets. I have practiced these commands many times and that's why I'm not asking autoprompt to help. If you also write these commands 2 to 3 times, then it will become easy for you as well. Look, we got this Korla Gautam 1023 bucket got created and Cloud Newbie 1023 was already present. Now let's try to upload an object. If I write ls, let's upload any one of the file to this bucket. I'll now again write AWS S3 API and hit enter. I got many options, right? From this, I'll now select put object. It was now again asking me to select bucket name. I'll write Korla Gautam 1023. It was now asking me to provide the key, which means name that you want to provide for the local object in the bucket. I'll name as KGF. There's one more thing called dash dash body. This is the local object. Now I want to upload this kgf.sh file to the bucket and I want to name as KGF. I hope it was clear to you. Now the object was successfully uploaded. It returned e-tag and server-side encryption. We'll look at this. Now to list the objects inside the bucket, I'll write AWS S3 API list objects dash dash bucket and I'll provide the bucket name. Now we got the detailed output. Look, that kgf.sh file named as kgf in the bucket. We got the size of the object and the storage class. This is the use of S3 API. We will get detailed output. Now it's activity time. Let's write a bash script which expects number as an input. Now we need to create those many files and upload to a folder to S3 bucket. Now I'll write vi s3 underscore activity.sh. The first line of a script is shebang line and /bin/bash. Now I have to create multiple files, right? I'll use loop to create those files. I'll select for loop for this. For I equal to 0, I less than $1, which means first argument plus I, do and then done. For those who are new to this bash, this is how we write a for loop in bash. If you are interested to learn bash basics, check my Linux playlist. Touch kgf underscore $i.txt, which is going to create kgf0.txt, kgf2.txt, kgf3.txt, and so on until the user provided number. Now I would like to add some text to these kgf files. kgf underscore $i is superhit to kgf underscore $i.txt. So kgf0 is superhit will be added to kgf0.txt, kgf1 is superhit will be added to kgf1.txt, and so on. Now I would like to upload all these files created to a folder in a bucket. For that I'll write AWS S3 API. I think put object and dash dash bucket and I'll provide my bucket name, that is Korla Gautam 1023, key and then body, dash dash key. This is where we have to name the object. I'll now write movie /kgf underscore $i.txt and then dash dash body kgf underscore $i.txt. Now I want to name these kgf files as C++ files in the bucket. So I'm uploading these local kgf.txt files as C++ files to movies folder in the bucket. When I save this file and when I execute, oh, I got permission denied error. I'll now give execute permissions to this script file sudo chmod +x s3 underscore act.sh. Now when I try to execute the file by passing 4 as an argument, now 4 kgf files has to be uploaded to the movies folder in the bucket. Slowly it was uploading. Look, we got e-tags and encryptions for all these 4 objects. Now I wanted to view the objects in the console. I'll hit refresh And when I open this bucket, look, there is a movies folder got created. If I open this folder, look, there is kgf1.cpp, 0.cpp, 2.cpp. If I select any one of those and when I click that open button, what will happen? Okay, it was downloading. Okay, now let's try to download this object using S3 API command. Okay, when I hit ls, okay, there are local text files. Now I wanted to delete one of the file and download the same object from bucket. Write rm kgf underscore 0.text. Let's delete kgf 0.text. I'll write AWS S3 API and hit enter for the auto prompt. I'll select get object to download the object. Just explore all these commands. It will be more fun when you try all these on your own. Dash dash bucket and my Korlagautam 1023 bucket and dash dash key. I wanted to download kgf0.cpp file, right, in the movies folder, and that's why movies/kgf0.cpp. I hit enter. Okay, I got an error. Out file is required. Okay, I need to mention to which file it has to download. I'll repeat the same command, AWS S3 API. I'll write kgf underscore 0.cpp. When I hit enter, this should work. Oh, again we got an error. No such bucket when calling the get object operation. Okay, I misspelled this bucket name. I forgot to put m in this bucket name. When I hit enter, yes, I got an output. The object was successfully downloaded to the local. When I write ls, look, we got kgf0.cpp. I wanted to view what is in that file. I'll write cat kgf0.cpp. Okay, kgf0 is super hit. Now let's learn some real world use cases. In real world, we will not be having access to the console. Every operation has to be done through CLI or SDK, which means through code. In real world, companies will be having hundreds or even thousands of S3 buckets, and each bucket may contain thousands or even millions of objects in it. So listing of buckets or objects or finding a specific bucket or object is a big headache, right? For suppose if I write AWS S3 API list objects dash dash bucket and my bucket name Korlagautam 1023. If I hit enter, look how many objects we got. We only have one file and one folder. Inside the folder, I think we have 4 objects. But in real world, we'll be having many objects in buckets. For suppose if I want to list only few of them, I'll repeat the same command, AWS S3 API list objects. I'll add dash dash max items. I'll now write 3, which means to display only 3 objects inside the bucket. Look, we only got 3 objects. KGF, KGF0.cpp, KGF1.cpp. Okay, we got too much of information. What if I only want object names? I'll repeat the same command, AWS S3 API list objects. I will add dash dash query and I'll write contents. The output we got is an array of objects and the name of an array is contents. And the output is in YAML syntax. So I'm now interested to get only the object names, not these e tags, owner ID and last modified. I'll write contents square braces dot key. I'll now get only the key names, which means object names inside this contents array. Sometimes we wanted to get some object or a bucket names that contains a specific name. For suppose I wanted to get all the object names that contains name movies in the object names. For this, I'll repeat the same command, AWS S3 API list objects and the same bucket name and dash dash query contents.key. We know that this command will give all the object names, but I only want object names that contains name movie in it. For this, I'll write question mark contains. This query language is JMES path. You can learn more about this language in their documentation or using ChatGPT or some other videos you can easily learn. So JMES path is a query language through which you can get any fields from JSON. I'll write key comma movies, which means give me all the object names which contains movies in their name. There is something wrong with the command. I got a syntax error. I think I need to include the query in the double quotations. I hope it should work now. Again we got some syntax error. Request string as a left operand. I think I need to include movies in the single quotations. Yes, we now got an output. Look, we got all the object names that has name movies in it. Movies kgf0.cpp, kgf1.cpp, kgf2.cpp, 3.cpp. There is one more way to do this. If I write AWS S3 API list objects and hit enter for the auto prompt, I'll give bucket name Korlagautam 1023. Look, there is something called prefix. Limits the response to the keys that begins with a specified prefix. If I select that one and give the name movies, look, we got all the objects that start with the name movies. We already know that how to get rid of all the unnecessary text and print only the object name. I'll write dash dash query contents.key. Look, we got the 4 objects that start with the name movies. Now let's do the same with buckets. I'll write AWS S3 API list bucket and hit enter for the auto prompt, and it says that list buckets is the option, not list bucket. I'll search for the prefix. Oh, there is no option called prefix. Okay, then I'll write dash dash query. I don't know how the output of this list buckets look like. Okay, then I'll hit enter. Okay, we got an output. Now I'll repeat the same command, AWS S3 API list buckets dash dash query. Okay, let's list the name of the buckets. I'll write buckets.name. I'll write the same question mark contains what we have did previously. I'll list the bucket name that contains Gautam in it. For that, name comma Gautam and query must be in double quotations. And if I hit enter, okay, again we got an error, unknown function contains. I hope I have given a capital C. Let's check it with small c then. Okay, I'll repeat the same command and replace the capital C with small c. And when I hit enter, look, we got the korlagautam.1023 bucket. Okay, for suppose if I want to get the largest object inside the bucket, first of all, I'll write the same command, AWS S3 API list objects, JCTS objects dash dash bucket korlagautam.1023 dash dash max items 3, so that I'm going to get 3 items. Look, there is a field called size in each object. So we already know that how to get the size. I'll repeat the same command. I'll remove this max items. Okay, I'll put this max items. Let me put that max items. Okay, it was not coming. Max items 3, and I'll write dash dash query contents dot size. If I hit enter, I got the sizes of each object. Okay, now I need to get the largest object in this bucket. Okay, how to do this? Is there any max function in JMES path? I'm not sure. I'm going to ask ChatGPT for this time. I want to get the largest object in my bucket using S3 API. Okay, it was giving. For the buckets more than 1000 objects, there is dash dash output JSON. Okay, I forgot to tell you something. You can even output the result that we are getting using executing the commands in different formats like YAML, JSON, table. I'll now use the same old command, AWS S3 API list objects. I'll write dash dash output table. Now you can list the output in the table format instead of YAML. Okay, the result is so weird. I'll repeat the same command. I'll use dash dash max items. Let's limit to 3 and see how the output would be. Okay, now also the output is so weird. Now let's limit to 1 item. Now I think the output would make some sense. This is also like normal output, has e tag, keys, last modified, size, storage class in a clean and structured format. Now just explore what are the types of formats that this S3 API supports using auto prompt. Okay, now back to ChatGPT. Let's copy the command it has given. Contents is the area of objects. Sort by sorts all the objects by their size property in ascending order. Okay, I'll now paste the given command and replace the bucket name with korlagautam1023. I hit enter. Look, I now got the largest object in the bucket. Did you observe this key and then size in the object? If we want just one field, like object name, we used to do contents.key. Here we are fetching multiple values, and that's why this object. So this sort by function sorts this contents array in ascending order by their size. And at last the -1 is we are fetching the last value, which means the largest one. And key and then size. We are fetching both key and size properties for the object stored in the bucket. For some people it might sound confusing. I'm here to help you. I'll now write the same command and I'll remove -1. When I hit enter, just observe the output. Objects in this bucket are sorted according to their size in ascending order. And -1 is we want last value. We are interested to get the largest object in the bucket. I hope now it makes some sense to you. Okay, for suppose if I wanted to sort objects in the bucket according to their last modified date. Yes, this can be a real world scenario, as there can be some old objects as well, and we are not interested in it. Okay, now I'll repeat the same command, dash dash query contents. Sorry, I didn't remember. I'll just hit enter. Okay, the value of this field is last modified. Now I'll write contents.last modified. Look, we got the last modified dates of each object. I'll now use the same old command and replace the size with last modified. I'll replace this with date modified and this with last modified. When I hit enter, I must see the object name and the date modified. Okay, there is something wrong with this command. Date modified null, key null. Okay, I misspelled the bucket name. This should be an error, right? I don't know why this didn't give us an error. I'll replace the bucket name Korlagautam 1023 when I hit enter. Okay, again we got the same error. Okay, let's again ask ChatGPT for help. I'll copy this command and paste in the ChatGPT. I'm using this command to sort the objects in the bucket. The command you're using has a syntax issue and does not handle sorting correctly. Okay, tell me what I missed. Okay, did you observe something? We missed the square braces. I'll now go to the command prompt and place the square braces. When I hit enter, it displayed the objects in the bucket according to their date modified. Latest one at the last, oldest one at the top. When I place -1 in the square braces, I'm going to get the latest modified object. What if I wanted to get all the objects in the bucket in descending order? I don't know. I'll ask ChatGPT again. I have already queried this. Correct command to get objects in the reverse order by size. Let's change it to date modified. Let's look what it gave. ::-1. What is the meaning of it? Reverses the sorted list to make it descending order, largest to smallest. If I scroll a little bit down, I have already queried this one as well. Start, stop, and then step. Start this index where the slice begins. Stop this index where the slice ends. Step the interval or stride between elements. If it is negative, the slice moves in reverse order. So the meaning of : :-1 is start was omitted, stop was omitted, and step is -1, which means move backward by one step. If I use the previous command and if I place : :-1, I think we got the largest sized object at the top. Let's verify this. So ::-1 is sorting the array in descending order, and if I didn't give anything, it was sorting in the ascending order. Okay, for suppose if I want to display the objects that are uploaded after a specific date, then this can also be a real world scenario, right? I'll again write AWS S3 API, list objects, -- bucket, Korlagautam 1023, and max items 3. Now I'm going to get 3 objects. I'll now repeat the same command. I'll write -- query and contents. Contents must be in double quotes. I just wanted to display the names of the objects. That's why I'll write contents.key. Inside this array, I'll write $last modified. Okay, now I wanted to display all the object names that are uploaded after this date. I'll now place this here. When I hit enter, I got kgf1, 2, 3.cpp as these files are uploaded after this date. I hope you people understood. Just explore these commands. If you practice these commands, then these commands are nothing. I thought of creating entire S3 hands-on video till solutions architect level, but later I realized that this was not possible for me. I'm sure in few days I'll post other videos. If you like my content, please watch the videos till the end. That's it, not more than that. In the next videos, we'll learn what are the storage classes, bucket policies, object encryption, and much more, complete hands-on, using CLI.
ఈ కార్యక్రమం ఇంతటితో సమాప్తం. రేపు ఇదే అలవాసులపై మళ్ళీ కలుసుకుందాం. అంతవరకు సెలవు మరి.